do something you're very passionate about. And don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we actually saw this, I think you see it all over the place in many different contexts, but I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where, you know, at the sort of peak of the sort of internet, you know, mania in, say, 1999, you found people who were, you know, very passionate about something. They kind of left that job and decided, I'm going to, you know, do something in the internet, because it's, you know, it was almost like the, you know, the 1849 gold rush in a way. I mean, you find that people, if you go back and study the history of the 1849 gold rush, you find that, you know, at that time, everybody who was within shouting distance of California was, you know, they might have been a doctor, but they quit being a doctor and they started panning for gold. And that almost never works. And even if it does work, you know, according to some metric, financial success or whatever it might be, I suspect it leaves you ultimately unsatisfied. So you really need to be very clear with yourself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is this notion of projecting yourself forward to age 80, looking back on your life and trying to make sure you've minimized the number of regrets you have. That works for career decisions. It works for family decisions. You know, do you want? I have a 14-month-old son, and it's very easy for me to, if I think about myself when I'm 80, I know I want to watch that little guy grow up. And so I don't want to be 80 and think, shoot, you know, I missed that whole thing, and I don't have the kind of relationship with my son that I wished I had, and so on and so on. So if you think about that, so I guess another thing that I would recommend to people is that they always take a long-term point of view. And I think this is something about which there's a lot of controversy. You know, there's a lot of people, and I'm just not one of them, believe that you should live for the now. I think what you do is you think about the great expanse of time ahead of you and try to make sure that you're planning for that in a way that's going to leave you ultimately satisfied. So this is just this is the way it works for me. And I mean, everybody needs to find that for themselves. So I think there are a lot of paths to satisfaction, and you need to find one that works for you. I think probably our most important piece of intellectual property is our brand name. And I think people, and I think this is very important for anybody who's going to start a company or market an invention to understand, is that brands for companies are like reputations for people. And reputations are hard-earned and easily lost. So the most important intellectual property that a company can have is, for us, it's Amazon. It's that name, but what it stands for. And we've worked very hard to earn trust. You can't ask for trust. You just have to do it the hard way, one step at a time. You make a promise and then fulfill the promise. You say, we'll deliver this to you, you know, tomorrow, and then you actually deliver it tomorrow. And if you do that over and over again, then ultimately you can instill your company's name with a reputation. And that's, I think, you know, sometimes people talk about brands in this very amorphous way, but for me, I like to think of it as a person, and what is the reputation that that person has, and how have they earned that reputation? I think stress, you can be, I think one of the things that's very important to note about stress is that stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified, perhaps in my conscious mind, that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it. I find as soon as I identify it and make the first phone call or send off the first email message or whatever it is that we're going to do to start to address that situation, even if it's not solved, the mere fact that we're addressing it dramatically reduces any stress that might come from it. So stress comes from ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring, I think, in large part. So stress doesn't come, people get stress wrong all the time, in my opinion. Stress doesn't come from hard work. In for example. You can be working incredibly hard and loving it. And likewise, you can be out of work and incredibly stressed over that. So, and likewise, if you kind of use that as an analogy for what I was just talking about, if you're out of work, but you're going through, a disciplined approach of, a series of job interviews and so on and working to remedy that situation, you're going to be a lot less stressed than if you're just worrying about it and doing nothing. Giving great customer experience, the only way to do that is with happy people. You can't do it with a set of miserable people, watching the clock all day.
So does that include work-life balance and all those things?
Yes, but I teach 3 leadership classes a year at Amazon. I'm a part of it. They're bigger classes, but I come in and teach a session. And I always talk about work-life balance, except I like to use the phrase work-life harmony rather than balance, because to me, balance implies a strict trade, whereas I find that when I am happy at work, I come home more energized, I'm a better husband, a better dad, and when I'm happy at home, I come in and better boss and better colleague. And so it's not, you could be out of work and have terrible work-life balance. Even though you've got all the time in the world,
right.
You could just feel like, oh my God, I'm miserable, and you would be draining energy. And so you have to find that harmony. It's a much better word. And I think for most people, it's about meaning. People want to know that they're doing something interesting and useful. And for us, because of the challenges that we have chosen for ourselves, we get to work in the future, and it's super fun to work in the future for the right kind of person. Easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work. I had some family role models, and I had some other people, some sort of historical role models that I really looked at too. So certainly my grandfather was a serious role model for me. I just had spent so much time. I think you learn different things from grandparents than you learn from parents. It's a great. I would encourage anybody to try to spend time not only with their parents but with their grandparents. But I also had 2 people I always would read about, and were Thomas Edison and Walt Disney. Those were sort of my 2 biographical heroes. I've always been interested in inventors and invention, and Edison, of course, just for a little kid and probably for adults too, I still feel this way at least, is not only the symbol of that, but the actual fact of that, the just incredible inventor. And I've always felt that there's a certain kind of important pioneering that goes on from an inventor like Thomas Edison. And then Disney was a different sort of thing. He also, a real pioneer and an inventor and doing new things. But it seemed to me that he had this incredible capability to create a vision that he could get a large number of people to share. Because the things that Disney invented, like Disneyland, the theme parks and so on, they were such big visions that no single individual, unlike a lot of the things that Edison worked on, no single individual could ever pull them off. And Walt Disney really was able to get a big team of people working in a concerted direction. I don't really remember the exact day or anything, but when I was in college is when I started thinking about wanting to be an entrepreneur someday. So I was not the kid with the lemonade stand. You know, I wasn't one of these kids who was always trying to raise money. I always wanted to be a scientist when I was little, but I'd also always loved computers. I was lucky because at my age this is unusual to have access to a mainframe computer from my elementary school when I was in 4th grade, and quickly learned that there was a pre-programmed Star Trek game on that computer, and then I never did anything except play Star Trek with the computer. So I don't know how formative that was. It certainly helped my Star Trek knowledge considerably. But I've always loved computers. Somewhere in college, I started watching some of the people who were like setting up, you know, college pizza delivery services and, you know, the kind of the core entrepreneurs, and thinking, you know, this looks like a really fun thing to do. It's a very rare idea that can be done by a single individual. Almost everything that is going to change the world, solve a problem, improve something, these are usually big efforts, and they require, you know, a team working together to really get something important done. And that has been the story of Amazon.com. At every step along the way, we've had a team here that is making this work. I mean, I don't know, even at the smallest scale, you have to figure out how to get help from your friends, from your family members, from people that you can hire in those early days. I think without that, it would never work.